Greg Palast dropped by to talk about today being the 10-year anniversary of the Deepwater Horizon disaster. Check it out, leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and on the line with us is Greg Palast, the author of several New York Times bestsellers, including The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. And you know him through his work with BBC Television, The Guardian, Democracy Now!, Rolling Stone. His new book, How Trump Stole 2020, will be out June 2nd. It's available for pre-order now. And GregPalast.com is his website. You can tweet him at Greg_Palast. Greg, welcome back. And tell us about Deepwater Horizon.
Okay. Forget the idea that it's an accident. I investigated the Deepwater Horizon for Channel 4 Television of Britain and the Big Arte system of Europe, and I did a whole feature-length film. What happened was 17 months before the Deepwater Horizon exploded, which they said had never happened. They never had a blowout before in an offshore a deepwater drill. But 17 months before, they had BP had almost an identical blowout in the Caspian Sea. Same ocean rig, a TransOcean deepwater rig. They covered it up, okay? They covered it up, and then David Rainey, their vice president, 9 months before the Deepwater Horizon exploded and blew out, he testified before Congress, Tom. The vice president of BP said that they've never had an unsafe situation at an offshore deepwater drilling platform, never in 50 years. And it was just months earlier that they had a massive blowout in the Caspian, which was covered up. And by the way, they got help, and now I only know about this, by the way, Tom, because I got literally an insider at BP who was on the rig next to the one that blew out in the Caspian Sea. I flew to the Caspian Sea to confirm that this happened. I got arrested there, but then was kind of catch and release because I was a British reporter at the time. And yeah, they had this blowout, and BP covered up, but they also, so I not only had that insider, but another insider named Chelsea Manning, who obtained the cables from the U.S. State Department, in which the State Department knew about the blowout, kept it secret, did not tell the U.S. Interior Department, which they must do by law. And that's how the Deepwater Horizon got its permit to drill. They had just started drilling, and they only got it over objection of the Interior Department, which said this is unsafe. They said, no, we've always been safe, and Congress forced them to allow that drilling. 11 men were incinerated, 600 miles of coastline destroyed. That's the real story.
And that was 10 years ago right now?
10 years ago today was the Deepwater Horizon blowout. And, you know, again, it's always been, you know, it's an act of nature. There were mistakes made at the drill. Of course, all the safety equipment was missing. I have to tell you that part of my investigation went up to Alaska because, you know, I was the chief investigator on the Exxon Valdez case. This was before I was a journalist for fraud charges brought by the natives of Alaska. And BP was actually in charge, supposed to prevent that spill of the Exxon Valdez. Exxon, because it had its name on the boat, got all the blame, but BP was more to blame. They didn't have any cleanup equipment there, which they had promised to have, which they'd signed off and said they had, and then they pulled the same stunt in the Gulf. So from, you know, basically 20 years later, we had the Deepwater Horizon. They'd covered up the Gulf spill, the Caspian Sea blowout, of course. So you've got a multiple, you know, a recidivist environmental killer out there, British Petroleum. And and as we head into Earth Day and remember this day 10 years ago, let's not forget they're still out there and nothing's improved.
That's amazing. So, Greg, one of the stories that keeps popping up with annoying regularity and has for the last 3 years is how Donald Trump and his administration, I mean, he's put a coal executive in charge of the EPA, a coal lobbyist, an oil lobbyist in charge of the Interior Department, how these guys keep undoing not just Obama-era regulations, but in some cases regulations that go all the way back to Nixon. As a consequence of that, is the next BP, Deepwater Horizon blowout kind of event more likely now?
Absolutely, because we are not enforcing that you need there's a lot of oil spills, Tom, and it's actually pretty easy to stop them. You basically surround them with rubber, and you suck. You get the sucker ships, or the containment ships as they call them, but you have to have that equipment in place, and it costs literally billions for BP to live up to its agreements for the Gulf and its agreements for Alaska, and they've never lived up to those agreements. There was no reason why first of all, they should never have used the system that they used, which is nitrogen-laced quick-dry cement. That still is not prohibited, and that's how it blew out in the Caspian. That's how it blew out at the Deepwater Horizon, was that, they're plugging these holes with this quick-dry cement. They put nitrogen in it, and on the deepwater wells, there's a lot of pressure. So it's like kind of blowing into a milkshake. You're going to create bubbles, and that's your blowout. So we still have these massive problems. We still have oil companies that really couldn't care if their rig workers get blown to kingdom come. It's just, in the end, cheaper for them to pay people off and pay up the cleanup than the literally billions of dollars they'd have to spend each year to keep drilling even close to safe. It's madness to be drilling deep water in the Gulf anyway, and that's still continuing.
Amazing. Yeah. Remarkable. On to the topic of your new book, How Trump Stole 2020. I know we talked about this last week, but you had this web event on Saturday over on Facebook, kind of with me,
Thom Hartmann,
kind of rolling out your new book.
And you can still pick up your statements at Greg Palast Investigates. By the way, 7 p.m. tonight we'll have another live, but on the Deepwater Horizon and big oil. 6 p.m. Pacific. Cool.